Well, hey, my friend, it's Kris Reece here, and I want to talk to you today about 4 steps to overcoming fear and living a life of purpose. Are you tired of being stuck and wondering what God wants you to do with your life? Do you look around and wonder why others are living a life of purpose while you can't seem to get out of your own way? Well, maybe you think to yourself, if I could just get over this fear of blank, I could be more confident to be who I was created to be. And you resolve that fear is the problem. Well, fear does have a way of crippling you. It reminds you of all the things that could go wrong and it keeps you trapped. So does that mean that people who are living a life of purpose have no fear? No, quite the contrary. Many of those folks admit that they have felt intense fear about honoring their calling. The only thing that distinguishes them is that they actually step out in the face of fear. They do it afraid. And in doing so, they learn that moving forward, even when you feel fear, is the surest way to build confidence. So here are the 4 steps that fear facers take to overcome fear and live their life of purpose. Step number 1. Take a small step. Look, I realize this seems paradoxical since fear is what seems to be holding you back from taking the step, but fear begins to dissipate as soon as you take a step. Fear facers know that the next step will become clear only after they take the first step. And number 2, they make friends with failure. I don't mean frenemies, I mean a true friendship with failure. Think of your best friends. They support you and they give you amazing feedback. Well, failure does the same thing, only better. It can help propel you into your success. Number 3, they ask different questions. Fear facers recognize that it's all about perspective. While questions like, what if they don't like me? What if I fail? And what if they see my flaws? They're all valid questions, but they produce negative answers. Instead, ask questions that elicit positive responses, such as, what if they like me? What if I soar? What if they see my strengths? Go ahead, try it. You may surprise yourself. Number 4, they get a mentor. Fear facers recognize that isolation breeds more fear. They understand the value of learning from those who have gone before them. Look, their mentor isn't always someone they know. For some, it's an online mentor, it's a preacher, or even the memoirs from a deceased person. They understand the value of someone's story who has been where they are and has gone where they'd like to go. God has created you with intentionality. He has wired you for a very unique purpose. And there is too much at stake to allow your fears to hold you back from living a life of purpose. So let that very fear that the enemy is trying to use to stop you, I want to encourage you to let it fuel you. If you desire to find and fulfill your God-given purpose, but don't know where to start, I want to encourage you to grab a copy of my new book, Make It Matter. It's a roadmap to living a life of purpose. In it, I will help you discover what God created you to be, help you to develop the gifts that He's given you, and learn how to design a life that you are proud of. I will include a link to learn more in the description box below. And while you're down there, would you give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments section which step you plan to take to move forward in your God-given purpose. Until next time, remember, nothing is impossible with God. Have you ever wondered why toxic people always seem to find their way into your life? No matter how hard you try to avoid them, you set boundaries, you keep your distance, and still, somehow you attract narcissists and manipulators. Maybe you've even started questioning if there's something about you that's pulling these people in. Well, you are not alone. The truth is, there are certain traits that narcissists find irresistible, and chances are you don't even realize you have them. That's why in this episode, I want to break down for you what those traits are, why you specifically have been targeted by toxic people, and most importantly, what you can do to stop attracting them and start repelling them. In case we haven't met yet, my name is Kris Reece, and it is my heart to help you navigate toxic relationships and conquer codependency biblically. So if you are not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe and notification button. Oh, and while you're down there, be sure to grab a copy of your free Toxic People Survival Guide. This was created just for you. Finding yourself repeatedly in relationships with narcissists can feel like being stuck in an emotional maze. And just when you think you found a way out, you somehow end up right back where you started. It's exhausting, and it can leave you wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Well, there are several reasons why this pattern might repeat, and they often involve a mix of personal history, emotional dynamics, and the traits that narcissists find irresistible. And the first one can be best described by thinking of it like this. Imagine you've been given a pair of glasses at a young age, but these glasses are tinted in such a way that they distort your view of healthy relationships. Now, as an adult, you're still wearing these glasses, and without realizing it, you're attracted to the very dynamics you learned early on, even if they're toxic. And the world you see feels familiar, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy. And this first trait is past trauma, otherwise known as unresolved childhood issues. And if you grew up in an environment where emotional manipulation, neglect, or narcissistic behavior was common, whether from a parent, caregiver, or other family member, you might unknowingly seek out those similar dynamics in adulthood. And these patterns can feel normal or even comfortable because they are what you've always known, even if they're harmful. And when your early experiences involve emotionally unavailable or manipulative caregivers, it conditions you to tolerate these behaviors, creating a blind spot for red flags. Well, narcissists can sense this tolerance and are naturally drawn to it because they know it makes it easier for them to enter your life and exert control. It's like subconsciously choosing the same story over and over again, thinking that this time it might end differently. But the narrative stays the same. So if childhood trauma can condition you to overlook toxic behavior, what about those traits that are inherently good? Imagine this. You're the person everyone comes to with their problems because you have a big heart and you always know the right things to say. You're like the lifeboat in the storm, always ready to rescue others from their emotional struggles. But what happens when the person in the storm doesn't want to be saved? They just want to keep pulling you under. Well, that is exactly what happens with the narcissists. They see your empathy as a resource they can drain, something they can cling to when they're going under. Again, it's like you're a well, always willing to give, but they never stop to think about whether that well might run dry. So that second trait is going to be empathy and compassion. And narcissists are often drawn to empathetic and compassionate individuals because they're likely to forgive, overlook flaws, or take on the responsibility for relationship issues. They are the first to apologize and the last to hold someone accountable. Empathetic and compassionate people naturally want to help others, making them become prime targets for toxic people. Your empathy might be a double-edged sword. Imagine you're a sponge, able to absorb the feelings and the needs of those around you. And while this makes you a nurturing, caring person, it also makes you a perfect match for a narcissist who's like a leaky faucet. They drip constant emotional needs and manipulation, and instead of addressing the root of their dysfunction, they expect you to just soak it all up, leaving you drained. That very trait that makes you compassionate becomes the tool they use to control and exhaust you. So if empathy and compassion can turn into tools a narcissist can use to control you, what happens when something even more desperate enters the mix? Imagine you're trying to hold on to something fragile, like a glass vase. You know it's delicate, so you grip it tightly, afraid that if you let go even a little, it might shatter. Well, that's what it feels like when you're dealing with low self-esteem or codependency in relationship with a narcissist. You cling to this relationship, believing that if you just do more, give more, try harder, everything will stay intact. But here's the problem. Narcissists love that quality about you, and they know how to take advantage of it. They dangle approval, affection, or validation just out of reach, keeping you in a constant state of pursuit, trying to prove your worth while they manipulate your need for affirmation. So yes, low self-esteem and codependency make you a target for toxic people. You see, people with low self-esteem and codependent tendencies might be more vulnerable to narcissists because they feel the need to prove their worth by taking care of others. Codependent individuals often find their value in fixing or saving, which then aligns with the narcissist's need for attention and admiration. Now, whatever your need is, affection, attention, validation, the narcissist will now create a cycle of control as you hold on desperately to gain their approval by assuming all of the responsibility in the relationship. And the narcissist has no issue exploiting this issue within you. And if you've struggled with self-worth, rescuing, or this fixer mentality, you might have been more willing to tolerate toxic behaviors or rationalize narcissistic actions, leading to a cycle where you prioritize their needs above your own. So if low self-esteem or codependency makes you more vulnerable by putting you in the role of a caretaker, what happens when someone comes along who seems to be the perfect answer to everything you've always wanted? Someone who makes you feel seen and valued and important right from the start. It's like being in a drought and it's finally getting a downpour of rain all over you. You're parched, craving validation, affection, and love, and this person, full of charm and charisma, comes along and suddenly you are drenched in all that attention and admiration that you've been longing for so long. But here's the problem. Narcissists are masters at illusion. They know how to love bomb you. They know how to pour down the rain on your thirsty soul, making you reliant upon them for further filling, making you feel special and unique, and it's easy to get caught up in their charm. But the reality is, it's all part of a well-crafted act designed to draw you in, only to control and manipulate you once they have you hooked. So number 4 is your attraction to charismatic individuals. Narcissists are often very charismatic, charming, and engaging when you first meet them. They use these traits to draw people in, making it difficult to see the manipulative behaviors lying beneath the surface. And this love bombing phase can make you feel special and valued, creating this strong initial connection. And they are likely everything you've ever wanted in a person, and it almost seems too good to be true. But it can't be, because they're here. They're making you feel oh so special. But the problem is that charm is superficial and well-crafted. So if you are drawn to confidence, charm, and excitement in relationships, you, my friend, might be more likely to fall for narcissists, especially during the idolization phase, where they are showering you with attention. So if being drawn to charisma and charm leaves you vulnerable to narcissists during the early stages of a relationship, what happens when those red flags start to show? How do they manage to push further into your life and gain control? That is where your boundaries, or the lack thereof, come into play. Think of boundaries as the walls that protect a city. And when those walls are strong and well guarded, it's hard for any enemy to invade. But if there are cracks in the wall, or worse, if the gates are just left wide open, it's going to be easy for someone with bad intentions to slip in unnoticed. And narcissists are experts at finding those weak spots and exploiting them. And if you struggle with boundaries, you are essentially leaving the door wide open for them to manipulate and take advantage of you. And they don't step over your lines, my friend. They bulldoze right through them, taking more and more until you're left wondering how things got so out of control. So yes, number 5 is your lack of boundaries. You see, narcissists are going to thrive on crossing lines and pushing limits. And if you have difficulty setting and enforcing boundaries, it's going to become easier for them to manipulate and control you. A lack of firm boundaries can make it hard to protect yourself from toxic behaviors, allowing narcissists to take advantage of your kindness or willingness to accommodate their needs. So here's the big question. How do I break the cycle? Well, number 1 is I need you to heal past trauma. Addressing any unresolved childhood trauma or past relationship wounds through therapy or counseling or even talking it through with a friend can help you identify and break patterns that draw narcissists into your life. My friend, if you need help, I have a course. It's an online course called Conquering Codependency Biblically that can help you break free. Or we have a link in the description section for a resource for private counseling. This is for faithful counseling. I would encourage you, if you're going to connect with them, be sure to use the link below, but also insist on finding a Christian counselor if that is of value to you. You are going to want to work through this past trauma. Number 2 is building your self and Christ esteem. Knowing who you are and whose you are can be a major repellent for takers in your life. Number 3, learn to set those boundaries. Saying yes when you want to say no is not a Christ-like quality. Developing strong, healthy boundaries will make it much more difficult for these parasitic freeloaders to piggyback off your life. Number 4, I want you to yield to those red flags. This is one mistake I wish I could take back in life. Instead of justifying, rationalizing those red flags, my friend, I want you to yield to them like you would any other red light. Otherwise, don't be surprised when that crash comes. And number 5, be the healthy. It's not easy finding safe, godly people to support you, but the best first step is to actually be the healthy that you wish to receive. Repeated relationships with narcissists can stem from a variety of factors, including past trauma, empathy, low self-esteem, or attraction to their charismatic nature. By understanding the dynamics at play and taking the steps to heal, set boundaries, and build your self-worth, you can say no to toxic and yes to healthy. And knowing these traits about yourself only is half the battle, though, because there are clear signs that you are dealing with a wolf in sheep's clothing. And to find out those signs of a Christian narcissist, go ahead and watch this episode here. And don't forget to jump down below to grab a copy of your free Narcissist Survival Guide. Do you feel like you have a tape recorder playing in your head? You ever feel trapped by your negative thinking? Many of us walk around with a pretty annoying script playing in our heads. It tells us things like, oh, I can't do this, or maybe my mother was right about me. And it runs over and over again in our minds what we shoulda, coulda, and woulda said. Look, sometimes your toxic thoughts can be a result of the things that have happened to you in the past, but still others can be a result of having never learned how to properly address those devil-sent thoughts that are seeking to destroy you. While it's normal to have negative thoughts from time to time, learning how to control these thoughts can be the difference between peace and success and possible depression. Toxic thinking can easily become a vicious negative cycle. If the cycle is not broken, it can and will negatively impact several areas of your life: physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. I'm sure you know that you can't continue to think negative thoughts about yourself, your spouse, and your situation and expect to be happy. But have you ever tried to put a thought out of your head? Just told yourself, I have to let this go. Well, if you're like most people, that method doesn't work very well. That's because trying to get rid of a negative thought is like trying to run away from your own legs. The harder you try, the more powerful it becomes. Getting rid of toxic thoughts is not a one-time event. It's a process. And I am excited to introduce to you a 4-step process to overcoming your toxic thinking. This process is so easy that you can apply it to any negative thought that tries to rob you of peace and happiness. And that's why I am thrilled to introduce Overcoming Toxic Thoughts, your 4-step journey to winning the battle in your mind. Once only available in my private sessions, I now share my 4-step method for overcoming toxic thoughts so that you can live a life of peace and purpose. Over the course of 4 weeks, you'll enjoy a new video teaching each week to guide you through each step. You'll also enjoy access to our private Facebook community where you can post your questions and connect with fellow members. You'll also have access to periodic live Facebook teachings to keep you moving forward on your journey. This course has delivered amazing results. You too can experience peace and happiness. In this course, you will learn the 4 steps to overcoming toxic thoughts, the 3 types of negative thoughts and how they impact you, how to evaluate the conversation in your head, the right questions to ask to stop the negative thoughts from spiraling out of control, how to quiet the chaos in your mind. You'll also learn how to avoid anxiety and depression and how to take control of your thoughts. As a Christian counselor and a life coach with over 20 years of mind renewal experience, I have seen firsthand in myself, my family, and my clients how this 4-step method can literally change the way you think forever. With simple, practical, easy to apply steps, you can control your negative thinking and experience true joy. So if you are determined to break free from the mental strongholds that are keeping you from a life of peace and purpose, then click down below this video to get started on your journey. I can't wait to hear about your success. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like the only adult? Now you're looking at this person that you love and wondering how on earth the two of you could have such polar opposite experiences. And maybe you've even called them a narcissist, but sometimes it doesn't quite fit. You know their behavior hurts, it's confusing, and you're left questioning, is it narcissism or could this be something else? And if you've been struggling with what seems like narcissistic childlike behavior, you're not alone. Emotional immaturity can look a lot like narcissism, and it's hard to know the difference. That's why in today's episode, I want to reveal to you the 8 signs that you're dealing with an emotionally immature person. My friend, by the end of our time together, you will understand exactly why they act the way they do and how to differentiate it from narcissism. And I will answer the all-important question with gut honesty. Can they change? Well, in case we haven't met yet, my name is Kris Reece, and it is my hope to help you navigate difficult relationships and conquer codependency biblically. I also want to invite you to grab a copy of our free Narcissist Survival Guide. This is my free gift to you. I'll include a link in the description section below. Emotional immaturity is a lot like dealing with a child who just isn't equipped to handle life's challenges. And that's because they kind of are, like children. Because as children, they likely went through trauma or neglect or were never taught the emotional tools to handle adult issues. And we all know that children cry, they lash out, they shut down when things don't go their way, but because they lack the tools to process their emotions. But when those same patterns show up in adults, it is far more confusing and painful. And it can feel like you're constantly tiptoeing around their reactions, hoping that you don't say something that sets them off. And it can be exhausting and look a lot like narcissism. But here's the thing. God may be revealing their emotional immaturity to help you see what you're truly dealing with and how to handle it in a way that preserves the relationship and your sanity. So let's dive into the 8 signs that you're dealing with emotional immaturity. Now, the first sign can be a lot like a game of hot potato. Do you remember hot potato when we were kids? It is where the person just keeps tossing that responsibility to someone else, refusing to hold it for themselves. And that's exactly what emotionally immature people do when they blame others. Now, blaming stems from an inability to handle the discomfort of accountability. In emotionally immature adults, this is a lot like constant excuses, shifting responsibility, or framing others as the problem. For example, a partner might say, if you hadn't nagged me, I wouldn't have forgotten. Or a parent might claim, you're the reason I'm so stressed. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they look to offload it onto others to avoid dealing with their decisions. But Galatians 6:5 reminds us, for each one should carry their own load. God calls us to take responsibility for our own actions rather than deflecting blame onto others. Sign number 2 is like being on a never-ending roller coaster ride of emotions, where you're expected to hold the controls, but all of the buttons and the controllers are all mixed up. So you hit up and you go sideways, you hit stop and it accelerates at top speed. This emotional roller coaster represents the constant mood swings experienced in emotionally immature relationships. A minor infraction is now blown out of proportion. Intense sadness is developed over small issues, and sudden anger is the norm, as these people don't know how to properly regulate their emotions. And this can be absolutely exhausting for you, as you never know when the next high and low are going to happen. But Proverbs 29:11 reminds us, a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. God values self-control and wisdom, encouraging us to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Sign number 3 is defensiveness. Imagine trying to have a simple conversation, but every word feels like you're stepping on a landmine. You approach carefully, hoping to bring something important up, but suddenly the air shifts. Instead of understanding, you're met with an explosion, a wall of denial, excuses, or even counterattacks. It's as if the very act of communication has triggered this invisible alarm. And this is the exhausting reality of dealing with defensiveness. It shuts down meaningful dialogue, leaving issues unresolved and the relationship completely strained. And Proverbs 10:17 reminds us, whoever heeds instruction is on the path to life, but he who rejects reproof leads others astray. We are called to be teachable and willing to accept guidance, but emotionally immature always have a "why are you always picking on me" attitude. They use defensiveness like an emotional shield, blocking anything that feels like criticism, even if it's meant to help them grow. Sign number 4 is victim mentality. Picture someone walking through life wearing a pair of glasses that distort every situation. They see every challenge as an attack, every problem as someone else's fault, and every disagreement as proof that the world is against them. No matter how much you support or encourage, their focus remains fixed on how unfairly they've been treated. This is the exhausting cycle of a victim mentality. It drains relationships, stifles growth, and it keeps the emotionally immature person trapped in a constant state of self-pity. And Matthew 7:3 asks us, why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice that log that is in your own eye? My friend, we are called to self-reflect, not externally blame. But emotionally immature people don't know how to sit in the consequences of their decisions. They see themselves as perpetual victims, always blaming someone or something else for their problems. And this often looks like self-pity and can easily be used to lure in those unsuspecting people into their distorted narrative, because the victim mentality doesn't just stop with the thoughts. It continues until it finds someone to rescue them in their short-term behavior, and that rescuer now becomes yet another person to blame later. As you can see, it is a very destructive cycle. Number 5 is stonewalling, otherwise known as the silent treatment. Stonewalling is like shutting a door in someone's face in the middle of a conversation. It cuts off connection. It leaves its unresolved tension hanging in the air. And the narcissists use this as a control tactic, but emotionally immature people use it as a way of avoiding conflict because, remember, they don't know how to handle heavy emotions constructively, so they withdraw. But it's destructive to a healthy relationship. You know, that silent treatment can be done on so many levels. They might ignore texts, walk away during discussions, or give you the cold shoulder for hours, days, maybe even weeks. And they may still talk to you, but intentionally withdraw affection. Anything to get the dynamic operating in their favor. It's kind of like the kid who holds his breath until his mother comes to his rescue. And if he has a weak, needy, or codependent mother, he'll know that she's going to come a-running. And the same is true for the emotionally immature person giving the silent treatment. It is a childish attempt at control. Sign number 6 can best be described like driving a car without brakes. Decisions are made in the heat of the moment, often leading to crashes that you both have to clean up later. Emotionally immature people struggle with impulsivity. They act without thinking, react to feelings or circumstances without considering long-term consequences. And this might look like overspending, reckless statements that they make, or snapping decisions, or that leave others feeling like they're frustrated or completely destabilized. And they're not just impulsive with their actions, they're impulsive with their words, declaring their undying love to you one day and then ghosting you the next. And now you can start to see just how damaging these can become when you start coupling these traits with each other. A husband may impulsively go out and buy a sports car and then blame you for not being supportive and using him for his money. A woman may go out and cheat on her husband and then blame him for never fulfilling her needs. Proverbs 13:16 says, "The prudent act with knowledge, but fools expose their folly." Emotionally immature people always feel like their words and their actions are the right thing to do in the moment, but are often left with regret later. And then they seek to offload that regret onto others, and that's where the unhealthy behaviors like blame shifting, defensiveness, or victim mentality are now added to the mix, further complicating this toxic dynamic. Number 7. Imagine being in a relationship where every decision, every conversation, every moment seems to revolve around one person. Their needs, their desires, their priorities. It's like standing in their shadow, constantly giving while they're taking without a second thought. And their actions scream, "What about me?" leaving very little room for genuine connection or mutual care. This is the frustrating dynamic of selfishness. It leaves others feeling overlooked, undervalued, and completely drained. And this may shock you. Selfishness isn't always intentional. In fact, it often stems from deep emotional immaturity and sometimes complete unawareness. And it can also be an overt, gimme, gimme, gimme type of attitude, or a covert, where they people please and concede, but with selfish give-to-get motives. But Philippians 2:3-4 reminds us, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others." Now, notice this scripture didn't say don't look to your own interests at all, but it says don't look only to your own interests. You see, in healthy relationships, there is mutual give and take, but emotionally immature individuals lack empathy and fail to see how their actions affect others, leaving the relationship one-sided and unfulfilling. Number 8 is manipulation. Have you ever had a conversation where by the end you're doing something you never agreed to or feeling guilty for saying no? It's like you're being nudged in a direction you didn't choose to, only to realize later that you were subtly steered the whole time. That's the tricky nature of manipulation. It's not always obvious, but it's definitely going to leave you feeling trapped and unsettled. You see, manipulation often shows up in emotionally immature people as a way to get their needs met without directly asking. And it's not necessarily calculated or malicious, and it usually stems from a fear of rejection, insecurity, or an inability to communicate effectively. However, this doesn't make it any less damaging to the relationship. And they may guilt trip with phrases like, "Oh, after all I've done for you," or "I don't ask for much," or they'll play the victim saying, "Oh, I guess I just can't count on you," or "I'm upset that you put me in that position." The intent is to offload their guilty feelings onto you because they lack the emotional maturity to process them properly. And while these tactics may feel unintentional, the result is still the same. The other person feels controlled, pressured, and emotionally drained. But Proverbs 11:3 reminds us the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. God calls us to live with integrity, and being honest and straightforward in our relationships is part of that. Manipulation, even if subtle or unintentional, undermines trust, creates conflict, and reflects a lack of trust in God's provision. Now, you may be saying to me, "Kris, these all sound a lot like narcissism." And you'd be right, but there's a difference. The key difference between emotional immaturity and narcissism lies in the intent and self-awareness. Emotional immaturity is rooted in insecurity, a lack of self-regulation, and an inability to process emotions or handle relationships effectively. Emotionally immature individuals often act without malicious intent, and they may show remorse or a willingness to change when they're approached, and given patience and support. Narcissism, on the other hand, is characterized by a constant pattern of entitlement, manipulation, and a lack of empathy, often used to maintain control and superiority. Now, while the narcissists also have deep-rooted insecurity and the ability to process emotions properly, they are rarely able to take accountability and they resist change. Not all emotionally immature people are narcissists, but I've yet to meet a narcissist that wasn't emotionally immature. So understanding these distinctions can help you label less and understand more. It can help you approach each behavior appropriately as you would deal with an emotionally immature person, vastly different than you would a narcissist. Now, here's the challenge with these types of people. It's not always a pervasive problem, and it's not always easy to detect. Just like the person who doesn't know how to read and write will learn behaviors that mimic that ability, the same is true for the emotionally immature person. They likely know enough social skills to fool people into thinking that they're giving, empathetic, mature individuals, but spend a significant amount of time with them and don't give them what they want or try to resolve conflict, and you're going to see the cracks in that facade. And that's also why emotionally immature people tend to have shallow relationships, ones that don't require much of them. And that's also why they think that their spouse or their significant other or anybody in their life that's calling them out is the actual problem, because they're the ones that they're having the problem with. And that's because significant relationships come with more commitment and requirements than those less committed relationships. So, how do you respond to these, unfortunately, emotionally stunted individuals? Well, responding to an emotionally immature person requires a combination of patience, clear boundaries, and grace. Avoid reacting emotionally to their behavior. I know, it's hard. It feels like you're constantly on high alert for their continual misunderstandings and reactivity, but don't respond in kind. Instead, remain calm and grounded, much like you would a child who doesn't know any better. Now, I'm not saying that you treat them like a child or that somehow you're better than them, but you have to use behaviors and language that meet them where they are. I know it's tempting to be like, dude, you're 40. What on earth are you doing? But that's like getting frustrated with someone who doesn't know how to read or write. Yes, they should be able to know how to do this, but telling them they don't and yelling at them and insulting them isn't going to equip them with the tools they need to grow. Instead, be gentle but direct in your communication to express your feelings and your expectations, focusing on solutions rather than pointing blame. I want to encourage you to set healthy boundaries to protect your emotional well-being and be consistent in maintaining them. Trust me, my friend, you're going to need them. And if you think the narcissist pushes boundaries, wait until you say no to an emotionally immature person. And of course, I want to encourage you to pray for them, because there is no one that is too far outside of God's reach. Look, I get it. Dealing with these emotionally stunted individuals is exhausting and unsustainable sometimes. Watching a grown man or a woman act in childish ways more often than not is enough to make you want to give up and throw in the towel. You want desperately for this person to address their issues head on, but instead they revert to these adolescent coping mechanisms. And you may be wondering, can these people actually change? Well, the answer is absolutely, but they have to want to. And that's why these behaviors can so easily mimic narcissism, because there's an element of denial or overcompensation that many adults, recognizing their emotional immaturity, are just too afraid to admit and get the help that they need to. So instead, they point blame, they deflect, they get defensive, all classic markers of narcissism. But they're also classic markers of children and emotionally stunted adults. Here's the thing, though. All narcissists are emotionally immature, but not all emotionally immature people are narcissists. You want to know the 5 clues to spot a Christian narcissist? Go ahead and check out this episode next. And if you are feeling overly responsible for someone else's feelings and behaviors, it might be a time to address the issue of codependency. And I created an online course that can help you conquer codependency biblically. I'll go ahead and include a link in the description section below. As a people pleaser, you are likely compassionate and caring. You like to put people at ease, and you often go along to get along. And people pleasers is just overall nice people, and nice certainly sounds like a nice way to be. But nice, by definition, means that you are pleasant and agreeable, often at the expense of your own values and identity. Still sound nice? Well, that's why in today's video, I want to share with you 9 people-pleasing traits that are not as nice as you think, and the 5 steps to stop people-pleasing and start God-pleasing. Well, hey, my friend, my name is Kris Reece, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of the Building Faith podcast, where it is my hope to bring you biblical solutions to life's tough challenges. If you are not already subscribed, would you go ahead and hit that subscribe and notification button? As a people pleaser, you likely avoid conflict at all costs. You assume the best of others, even when they've shown you their worst. And you often say yes, even when you should say no, simply because you need their validation. And if you see yourself as a people pleaser, I want you to imagine for a moment that this is you. Every time you change yourself to keep others happy, every time you betray your values to fit in, every time you allow someone else to trample your boundaries in order to be liked by them, it's a bit like doing this. You are removing tiny piece of yourself. So every time you agree, even when you disagree, every time you apologize for doing something that you didn't do wrong, every time you take the blame when it's not yours, every time you enable bad behavior to keep the peace, you compromise the foundation of who you are. And each individual compromise feels like, no big deal. After all, you're keeping the peace, right? But here's the problem. Little by little, you chip away at yourself, and you give little pieces of yourself away to someone else until there are so many gaps that you don't even recognize who you are. Or worse, it all comes crumbling down. So when it's important that you show up in life as you don't know how, because you don't know who you are anymore. You're not sure who you are outside of the opinions and expectations of others. You're not sure who you are outside of the approval and validation of others. You're not even sure what matters most to you because you've spent so much of your life putting others first, craving their validation and ignoring your own needs. That is why you're struggling to live a life of purpose, because you've put your purpose in other people's hands. And these people that you're trying to please so much don't even find this quality attractive. They see a broken, fragile person that they can likely take advantage of. After all, it doesn't take much to see that you need them to keep yourself together. So my question for you is this. Is this the dependent place you want to live from? Before things come tumbling down completely, my friend, there is a way forward. So if you would be willing to walk this journey, God will begin to rebuild those fragmented pieces of your personality one by one until you are healed and whole. So number 1 is to recognize. Recognize people-pleasing for what it truly is. It is a self-serving, idolatrous, even manipulative way of life. I mean, let's be honest. People pleasers strive to please others because they're trying to please themselves. You must acknowledge that give to get motive. Number 2 is to repent. It's hard to imagine for having to repent of being nice. But remember that niceness is driven by an internal motivation for approval and addiction outside of God. So every time you say yes to others and no to God, you confirm your allegiance to meeting your need, not your Savior. Number 3 is to resolve. Now is the time to decide whom you'll serve. Matthew 6:24 reminds us that we can't serve two masters. You can't be fully devoted to following Jesus and also fully devoted to the approval of others. People-pleasing isn't as Christ-like as you'd like to believe. Jesus lived to glorify the Father, and so should we. Number 4, rebuild. We're looking to rebuild your identity. If you don't know who you are, how will you know what to say yes to and what to say no to? Psalm 139:13 reminds us that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. God was intentional in how He created you. So my friend, I want to encourage you to go be intentional about discovering it. And a great place to start in understanding your God-given temperament. And to learn more, I want to invite you to grab a copy of our free What's My Temperament Guide. I'll include a link in the description section below. And number 5, we're going to reject. When you say yes to people, you say no to God. Learning how to set healthy boundaries will keep you from allowing the enemy to distract you with every seemingly urgent need designed to keep you from living life for God. Boundaries aren't what mean people say when they can't take it anymore. Boundaries are what healthy people do to never reach that point. And if you're tired of saying yes, but you feel powerless to say no, I want to encourage you to check out this episode right here. And you want to know what type of people pleaser you are? Be sure to take our free quiz. I'll include a link in the description section below. And if you are tired of people pleasing and want to start God pleasing, be sure to check out my online course called Conquering Codependency Biblically. I'll include a link in the description section below. Do you have strange dreams that just don't seem to make sense? Do you wake up and wonder, what was that all about? Dreams are more than just leftover stress or the effects of what you ate the night before. They can hold tremendous revelation. So let's talk about the 3 reasons that it's important to pay attention to your dreams. Well, hey there, my name is Kris Reece, and if you are looking for biblical solutions to life's tough challenges, go ahead and hit that subscribe and notification button. Reason number 1, God is speaking to you. Job 33:14 tells us, "For God does speak, now one way, now another, though no one perceives it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, He may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings to turn from their wrongdoing and keep them from pride, to preserve them from the pit, their lives from perishing by the sword." God longs to communicate with you, and a big way that He does this is when you are completely at rest and undistracted in your dreams. And there are several ways that God will speak to us in dreams. For one, warning dreams. God will often give you a dream to warn you. He did it with Joseph, the father of Jesus, in Matthew 2:13. And after the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother." And the angel said, "Stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." Directional dreams. These dreams tell you where to go and what to do. And I had one such dream when God wanted me to close my fitness business. Prophetic dreams. Dreams sent from God can be telling of the future. These are rare. Cleansing dreams. These are dreams where God is purging you of impurities. And these are just a few of the types of dreams that God will send. And for more detailed teaching on dream types, stay tuned, because we're going to start to dive deeper. And God's purpose in your dreams is simple, that you may be free to live life abundantly and follow God with your whole heart. So pay attention. God could be trying to get your attention through your dreams. And number 2, the enemy is attacking. 1 Peter 5:8 reminds us that we are to be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. His aim is to kill, steal, and destroy anything of value in your life. And dreams from Satan are always dark in color and dark in mood. And Satan does his best to tempt us with wicked thoughts. And what better time to do that when we are asleep and vulnerable? But be careful with the thoughts and sins that you take with you to bed. They can and will be used against you. These can be big ticket sins like lust and addiction, or you could simply create a portal by what you're watching or listening to. As always, Jesus provided a way of escape from our enemy. You can close the doors to demonic dreams through repentance. And if you are filled with the Holy Spirit, you have authority over the enemy. Just remember that Satan needs to go to God for permission. So remember that God is the one in control. If he allowed it, it is for your good, and if you will embrace it as such. And reason number 3, you have unresolved soul issues. Your soul consists of your mind, your will, and your emotions, and it's easy to have unresolved issues within these areas. Past childhood pain coupled with dashed hopes of today, sprinkled with an inability to discern between what's normal life struggles and what needs to be dealt with, is a recipe for unresolved emotional and mental issues. And this can sometimes be the explanation of why people throw themselves into their work, their children, or other activities and addiction. It is an effort to disguise or dart from the issues. But God does not call us to live in ignorance. Proverbs 22:3 reminds us that the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Sometimes the dreams that you're having are as a result of the issues in your life that you are trying to ignore or deem unimportant. And again, I believe that God's hand is here because he wants to walk with you through any issue that you may be facing. Remember that God desires for you to bring everything to God in prayer. So now that you've recognized the importance of paying attention to your dreams, what do you do with them? So let's talk about some do's and don'ts of dreams. Don't buy a dream dictionary, even if it's a Christian one. And while dream symbols are important, they do not dictate the meaning of the dream. They will support the meaning of the dream. And many make the mistake of looking up the meaning of a symbol and then defining the dream according to that symbol. And this, my friend, could lead you down a very wrong path. Don't take every dream literally. Don't give in to fear. Even bad dreams can be turned around if surrendered to God. Do write it down. You see, dreams are fleeting. If you value hearing from God, you will capture those dreams in the morning and do so by recording them. Do pray and ask for revelation. While there are gifted dream interpreters, remember the words of Joseph in Genesis 40, verse 8. Do not interpretations belong to God? So I want to invite you, my friend, to join us next week as we talk about how to interpret your dreams biblically. In the meantime, I want to invite you to grab a copy of our free Uncover Your God-Given Purpose Guide. I'll go ahead and include a link in the description section below. And if you've been enjoying the content on this channel, I want to invite you to become a member of Kris Reece Ministries. It is free to join, and when you do, you're going to be sent a fresh new teaching every week, and you can respond to that email for prayer support from our ministry team, and you can submit your questions to potentially be answered on our Building Faith podcast. Well, my friend, that's all the time that we have for today. Until next time, remember, all things are possible with God. Thank you for watching Christian Life TV. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also, help us to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and build believers all around the world. Make a one-time donation or become a monthly partner with Kris Reece Ministries by clicking on the donate link now. Have you ever been so fed up with a narcissist's behavior that you just wanted to call them out, tell them off, and expose their lies? Well, hold on. Before you take that leap, you need to know something crucial. What if I told you that calling out a narcissist will backfire in ways you've never imagined? And that's why in this episode, we are diving deep into why confronting them is not likely to turn out the way you hoped, and what you can expect in response, and the surprising alternative that God has for you. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. First, I need to tell you about Brenda. Brenda came to me years ago overwhelmed by the realization that not only had her mother been manipulative her entire life, but now her 32-year-old daughter also exhibited severe narcissistic traits. And for years, Brenda believed her mother's lies, thinking that she was damaged and disrespectful, and she took on the responsibility of trying to make her daughter more respectful and appreciative, never realizing the true nature of both of their behaviors. And when Brenda finally understood what was really happening, she was ready to confront them both. Now, with her daughter, she wanted to share what she had learned about narcissism, hoping to open her eyes and stop the abuse and jumpstart a new relationship. But she chose to start with her mother. You see, Brenda was fed up. She was tired of the lies and the blame that she had endured her entire life. She saw through her mother's manipulative, gaslighting tactics and was determined to let her know she was on to her. And Brenda shouted with a confidence that I'd never seen before, "She'll have no other choice but to stop. Once she knows, I'm on to her." And I said, "Brenda, are you sure about that?" "Yes, why wouldn't I be?" she said. "Now I know, and she needs to know that I know." And despite my advice to proceed cautiously, Brenda confronted both her mother and her daughter in the same day. But the unexpected happened. Both discussions spiraled into a toxic quagmire, leaving Brenda feeling more drained, confused, and out of control than she was before. And she asked me, what went wrong? I was loving with my daughter and firm with my mother. I even rehearsed what I was going to say. What happened? It's like it all backfired on me. Now, I kept my mouth shut, but I got to admit the thought of, "I tried to warn you," was kind of lingering in my mind. Brenda's situation is, unfortunately, all too common. And whether your narcissist is a conniving coworker, a manipulative mother, an entitled child, or a childish spouse, you've likely reached a point where you finally have a name to what you've been experiencing. You finally understand that their behavior is just as destructive as you sensed it was. And you're done beating yourself up and you are ready to call this out. Call out the lies, call out the inconsistencies, the exaggerations, the gaslighting, the half-truths, and the manipulations. You are done holding it in. And you think to yourself, if there's any hope for them to change, if there's any hope to keep my sanity, I gotta say something. And maybe you simply just want to point out the contradictions in their stories so that you can both finally get on the same page. Maybe they consistently say one thing one day, but the complete opposite the next day. Maybe your husband blames you because he has to work so hard to support you. And despite how many times you've begged him to retire, he won't because he loves what he does. So you ask, which is it? Do you love what you do, or are you doing this because I'm making you? The answer is, whatever suits the moment. Whatever answer makes them look like the hero and the victim. Neither are true, and both are true. But since they can't take responsibility for themselves and they feel like better victims, they will default to blaming you when they feel out of control and taking credit when things are going well. My friend, you're never going to win that challenge. Why? Because you are trying to have a healthy relationship with an unhealthy person. You keep beating yourself up for not being able to say it better when the truth is, life with a narcissist is like building a house on shifting sand. So how do you stop feeling like you're on a rickety rowboat that could tip over at any moment? First, you need to remember that narcissists don't see their problems, but they will see you as a problem if you try to point it out. Secondly, most healthy people want their distorted thinking challenged, not the narcissist. They are not a healthy person, and there's nothing that you're going to do to make them healthy. In fact, the more you try, the more they become ingrained in their delusion. They have to hold on to their distorted truth to feel good about themselves. So you challenging them only backs them into a corner. Because you can clearly see that everything that they're saying is a line of baloney, but keep backing them into a corner and you won't get met with a meek puppy who sees the error of his ways. You're going to get met with a rabid dog that turns and attacks you. Their defenses will turn into a full-blown attack, not only blaming you for the original situation, but now adding additional charges. Now you're blamed for stressing them out, for ruining the weekend, for being a control freak, for being a nitpicker who just can't let things go. And they lash back with comments like, "You see I'm stressed out and you just keep badgering me." My friend, there are times when we do need to back off. We need to have better discernment with our timing. But when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you better be prepared to always have to back off to keep the peace. And no, it's not the kind of peace that the Bible talks about, because no matter what you say, no matter what you do, it will always be your fault. And look, I get it. That is a tough pill to swallow, especially if you're a good person who's trying to do right by this relationship. Especially if you are a problem solver who can see the problem that needs fixing. And maybe you've given them 10, 20, 30 years of marriage, raised their children, helped support their business, created a lifestyle so they could thrive. And now your eyes are open. And your instinct is to go to this person and try to explain what you're seeing in hopes that their eyes will be open. But instead of open eyes, you're met with snarling teeth. And you might be tempted to think that maybe you are the problem, because everything seemed fine when you didn't bring anything up. Everything was okay before I tried to make it better. It wasn't okay, and you know it. That vicious, rabid dog was lying dormant all this time. And it's not your fault that he or she is attacking. It is not your responsibility to keep this ferocious animal from attacking you. And it is certainly not your fault when they do. I was once in a relationship with a guy who presented as so calm and laid back and fun-loving, but when someone ticked him off, he went nuts. He would say, "Oh, I'm a super nice guy, but when someone makes me mad, that's it. All bets are off." And he actually thought that this was something to brag about, because in essence, he was saying, "I'm a really nice guy, and you're the one making me into a monster." No, my friend. The monster was always there, and you just didn't know how to control it. And don't even think about going back to them after an interaction when your feelings have been hurt. They're not the type to lovingly hold your emotions and work through them, and they're certainly not going to apologize and recognize where they've gone wrong, even if it was unintentional. Instead, you're going to be blamed for not being able to let things go, for rehashing the past, even if the past was just yesterday, and always looking to hurt them. Or maybe they kind of do apologize for something, but because you need resolve, you start digging deeper. You start asking more questions. Well, my friend, watch how quickly that apology goes right out the window. The "I'm sorry that you were met with 10 minutes ago" rages right back to their arrogant, victim-like defensiveness, which I'm hoping by this point you're realizing that it proves that that apology meant nothing. Call them out and watch out. And if there is any area that they have worked at improving on, beware. There is only one thing worse than a narcissist, and that's a self-improving narcissist. Because they honestly believe that what you and I would consider a minor change, they truly believe is a life transformation for all to admire and model. Narcissists are self-focused, deluded, grandiose victims. That's the narrative they carry through life. To let go of that narrative means that they will have to assume responsibility for their actions and right their wrongs. They can't and they won't do that. So when you step in thinking that you are going to enlighten them and have this healthy dialogue because your eyes have been opened and the two of you will now heal and grow together, oh, my friend, I'm hoping that you can see that that thinking is diluted and that hope is displaced. And if that's not bad enough, here's the worst part of all. This is a train wreck that you will never see coming. Narcissists can get under your skin and into your head and burrow themselves like a parasite, and they don't even realize it. No, this doesn't take the responsibility off them, but I want you to track with me for just a moment on how your fight starts off relationally and ends spiritually. You see, Satan is going to slither his way in when you least expect it during these difficult relationships. He is the ultimate parasite that wants to hide beneath the surface. So even after you've cut contact or sought help and set boundaries, he still has inside access to wreak havoc in your life. So what is this surprising trap? It's when your focus is all about them. getting them to see what they've done wrong, caring what they think, being blown away by another one of their selfish actions, needing to speak your mind because they just have to know. My friend, this is a trap for you. Give in to that mindset and you've just taken demonic bait. And these demons will keep you trapped in your mind, trapped in your emotions, because it's all you can think about, setting the record straight, defending your good name, putting them in their place. But what slips right through your fingers is the glorious, victorious life that God planned for you. So how do you avoid this demonic death grip? Well, the good news is there are better biblical options than calling them out. And no, it doesn't involve stuffing your feelings. And here's a few that God wants you to take so that you can emerge from the years of demonic, narcissistic distortion. Number one, break the bond. Codependency can be a